Non-compliant construction in Darwin. Let's have a look. Good evening everyone, Florian Heise here and welcome to another episode of Heise Says. I've got my evening stein of coffee and I've just come back from a conference, a marketing conference. And I'll talk to you about that I think in another episode. But while I was there, I had a message on my phone about some serious compliance issues with buildings in Darwin. And the scary thing was that the government knew about it and didn't inform people. So people were buying these buildings where the government was aware that there were issues with it. And my understanding is, don't we pay stamp duty so the government, is aware that a building is transferring from one person's hands to another person's hands? Maybe it would have perhaps a duty of care to inform a member of the public that they're buying a building with inherent risks or non-compliant issues? Don't you think? Before we even get into the article, guys, let me know what you think about that. Does that seem fair? Does that seem fair? What the hell are we paying all this money for the government to do all this stuff when it just spills through the cracks? It just spills through the cracks. Now, Darwin's a bit funny too with how it handles compliance. It's a bit different to other parts of the country. And this is from the ABC. So the Northern Territory government knew of structural flaws in Darwin buildings but didn't tell owners. So if you knew, if we knew of serious structural flaws in a building and we sign our insurance company, we don't tell them, do you think the insurance company would get out of their insurance claims? Maybe any of these owners of these buildings can say, oh, well, I don't need to pay taxes now because the government didn't fulfill their duty of care. Could any accountants or lawyers let me know in the comments if that would be possible? So a Darwin man says he feels cheated after purchasing a unit in a residential tower, unaware that a Northern Territory government department had already privately concluded it was structurally non-compliant. Structurally non-compliant. Richard Sager is one of at least 5 buyers who purchased units during the 15 months it took for the Department of Infrastructure Planning and Logistics to publicly disclose its concerns, the ABC can reveal. 15 months. Well, we can't be surprised. How long has it taken them to respond to other things? I mean, come on, it's government. It's government. In July last year, when Mr. Sager paid $350,000 for a unit in the 12-story Catalyst building on the edge of the Darwin CBD, he thought he had secured the perfect place. So let's have a look. We'll jump here to our map. And here's the building. I haven't had the pleasure of visiting Darwin yet. I'd love to go there. I can just imagine it would be very bloody hot. So here it is. It's right on the edge. And we'll go to Street View to get a bit of a look. Come on. I mean, there you go. You can see. Multi-story, rather modern building in Darwin. Look at all those palm trees, guys. Good old Darwin. If you're from Darwin, thumbs up. Let me know what it's like in the comments, guys, and where a good beer is. Or a good steak. I'd like a good steak. So, it was very handy to where I work, and it looked like a real quality, modern, and exciting place to live, he said. 9 months after moving in April this year, so 9 months, Mr. Sager received a notice from the DIPL explaining that it had been investigating the works of a structural engineer, John Scott of JWS Consulting, for the past 2 years. It had concluded that 9 buildings across Darwin and Palmerston, all designed and certified by Mr. Scott, did not meet the National Construction Code. Okay, that sounds bad. Hopefully it is. It may still be okay. About 200 affected unit owners, including those in the Catalyst building, were ordered to independently assess and rectify the situation at their own costs. Ooh, okay. Though no fault of their own, they had suddenly become caught up in a compliance issue affecting multi-story residential buildings across the country, such as Opal Tower and Mascot Towers in Sydney. Well, you would think, and I'm no legal expert, but you think they would have a case against the structural engineer. If it was negligence on his part, they could go him. That's what I was warned about in architecture. That's why professionals have professional indemnity insurance. That's why a lot of these organizations, that's really the push for registration of professionals. It's to ensure that they have the PI insurance. That's the one advantage of it. It's to make sure that the government has a log of all of the engineers, all of the architects that have the PI insurance in place, and you need to maintain it. I think I was talking to a survey, they even have to have it for like 6 months or years after they're dead. We have to have it for, I think, 6 years for the end of every building. So you just got to keep it up. So if he did a dodge, if the structural engineer was at fault, then they could have legal recourse against him. Last week it was revealed that owners of units in Opal Tower are seeking millions of dollars in compensation from the New South Wales government in a class action lawsuit. Well, see, that's not a normal thing, how they're getting away with that. That's to do with the fact that the government is considered a developer because they own part of the land and part of the units. It's a little different. So getting back to this building. I feel cheated. Mr. Sager put the timing of his purchase down to bad luck. But a ministerial briefing obtained by the ABC through the Freedom of Information Act has raised questions about whether DIPL should have informed owners and prospective buyers like Mr. Sager sooner than it did. Or should his compliance lawyer contacted DIPL to see if there were any investigations ongoing about the building? Would any compliance lawyer actually do that? Would you think to do that? Now I will. Now I will. It couldn't hurt. It could not hurt to make a phone call, at least find out. The briefing showed DIPL received a final assessment report in January 2018, concluding that all 9 buildings were non-compliant with the NCC, the National Construction Code. That was 15 months before DIPL publicly disclosed the issue and 6 months before Mr. Sager purchased his units. I'd like to know what the actual issue is. I feel cheated, loss of confidence in the system, Mr. Sager said. Well, does anyone have any confidence in the system? Why was I allowed to buy a property where the government knew? Why was I allowed to buy when the government knew there was issues, I'm assuming? Repairs could cost owners $1.5 million. The issue in all 9 buildings relates to concrete structures known as transfer slabs, which spread a building's weight onto support columns. If they are not designed correctly, there is a risk of punching shear failure, where the columns punch through the slab, compromising the structural integrity of the building. The engineer in question was referred to the Building Practitioners Board, which will hold an inquiry into alleged professional misconduct on August 19. Mr. Sager still doesn't know how much money he will have to contribute towards his body corporate's efforts to fix the issue. But owners in another affected building at 10 Duke Street in Stewart Park have been told it could cost more than $1.5 million to undertake extensive rectification works. Did he undersize the slab? Wasn't the rear put in properly? What happened? I'd love to know a bit more. I'd love to know if anyone has access to the drawings, or if anyone knows a bit more. It would be good to know, because these buildings are relatively new. Maybe he designed them to an incorrect standard. Maybe not taking account of the requirements of the Northern Territory. You'd think though, if he'd done several buildings there, he'd know all about it. I remember once my father designed a building for the old timber framing standard. I can't remember, W22, the old wind standards that have been updated. So we had to this was years ago, we had to modify his design for the new standards, and the certifier. No, the structural engineer. He got his structural engineer to check it, because that's what he used to do. He'd do the calcs himself for the little houses and get an engineer to check it for him. And he caught it, and then he had to update the standards. It wasn't that big a deal, but it didn't get built. It got checked, and it got caught, so the system worked. So, when you purchase a new property in Australia, you kind of expect that everything will be fine, that there are standards in place and quality is assured. Then this happens, said one owner who asked to remain anonymous. It's a complete disaster. Land title records show one of the units in the building, a luxury penthouse, was purchased for $1 million just 2 weeks before DIPL publicly disclosed the structural issue. Wouldn't you be happy if you sold? If you sold just 2 weeks before this was released, you'd be so happy. But you would be so annoyed if you purchased just before, and just 2 weeks later it came out. Oh, you'd be heartbroken. The ABC is aware of at least 3 other units in affected buildings which were purchased in the 15 months after DIPL received the final assessment report. We've got many examples in other states where properties are just losing millions of dollars, so this should have been managed a lot better than what it currently has been, Mr. Sager said. Well, you'd hope so, but I mean, it's government. It's government. You know, I mean, here you go. Look, here's all the buildings just around here. Owners may not have bought apartments if aware of the problem. Well, yes, or you would have factored that into your ongoing cost. I mean, think about it now. If there is going to be ongoing repairs at Mascot Tower, and there will be a continuing amount of payments, if you are buying an apartment, wouldn't you take wouldn't you take account of that ongoing cost to own that apartment? Yeah, you would. Guaranteed you would. And then that'll make a financial point of difference between buying one apartment to buying another. So it's common sense. While the Building Act does not require DIPL to inform prospective buyers during its investigations, there should have been greater transparency, said Trevor Trisbrigg, Northern Territory President of the Australian Institute of Conveyancers. Well, yes, maybe that needs to change. Maybe the Building Act needs to change to that this information is publicly aware. That if a building is currently undergoing an investigation, it should be aware. Let me know in the comments if you think that's a good idea. It wouldn't be too hard to implement. That is concerning because those people will now have to contribute to the cost to rectify the building, whereas maybe their offer would have been different if they knew it was one of the affected buildings, he said. Yeah, 9 buildings across Darwin. DIPL said it could not have informed building owners any sooner. The time taken to bring the matter to the attention of the building owners was necessary to ensure the technical aspects of the allegations were determined so that they could be relied upon in issuing the building notices to owners and referring the practitioner to the Building Practitioners Board, it said. Yes, I can see exactly where they're coming from. Because they can't do it haphazard. Sadly, I think this is just an example of bad timing for the prospective buyers. That's what my instincts are telling me. I mean, maybe if a building is under investigation, it should be made available, that people can take account of that. But then if you're an owner wanting to sell, that would annoy you too, wouldn't it? So it's no one's going to win in this situation. No one is going to win. Despite the non-compliant finding, DIPL said the buildings were never deemed unsafe. Okay, so hopefully it's just a minor issue. A minor issue. Infrastructure Minister Eva Lawler would not say prospective buyers should have been informed sooner, but she questioned the length of her department's investigation. Yes, those time frames concern me, Ms. Lawler said. I did raise that, and have asked for a review of those processes around those time frames, but the department has assured me they followed very clearly the right processes. Since issuing building notices in April, anyone currently considering the purchase of a unit can find out if it's one of the affected buildings, DIPL said. A prospective purchaser or agent can undertake a review of the building file with the owner's consent to identify any contraventions or current enforcement actions in progress under the Building Act, it said. So the address of buildings redacted by government. While the ministerial briefing provides a basic timeline, a more extensive chronology of events has been redacted from the FOI documents because DIPL believed they could prejudice the upcoming inquiry into Mr. Scott's work. The address of the 9 buildings have also been blacked out in the documents because DIPL said disclosure could reduce the value of the buildings and have a negative impact on the wider Northern Territory economy. Well, yeah. I mean, Yeah, it will. It will. It's just the state of construction in Australia at the moment. People are losing confidence. Consumers are losing confidence. Oh, wait a minute. What did I want there? My Heise Says overlay's gone. What's going on? Oh well, there we go. I'll put that back. Sorry guys, I just noticed that. So I got to keep my logo. The documents do, however, reveal the suburbs where each of the buildings is located, including Darwin, Stewart Park, Parapark, Coconut Grove, Milner, Johnston, and Rosebery. Since April, 3 of the buildings have been rectified, and work is underway on 2 others, DIPL said. But 4 buildings still require permanent engineering solutions, the cost of which is largely unknown. Ms. Lawler said residents would need to temporarily move out of at least one of the buildings, the address of which has not been disclosed. It requires some more substantial work that will require people to vacate while they do some of that work, Ms. Lawler said. While the costs will initially be borne by the owners of affected buildings, some body corporates are engaging lawyers in the hope that they can recoup expenses in the future. So this would be interesting to learn a bit more of the case, what actually happened. Now let's have a look. Timeline for non-compliance. May 2017, a ministerial briefing reveals that DIPL's initial investigation was triggered by an alleged puncturing shear failure during the construction of a building in Rapid Creek. The building was later rectified to meet the National Construction Code. October 2017, DIPL engages an independent consultant to assess the structural integrity of 9 other buildings linked to the structural engineer, John Scott. 2018, consultants provided the final assessment report to the department, concluding that all 9 buildings were non-compliant with the NCC. 2018, consultants in DIPL worked with Mr. Scott on reaching an agreement on the level of compliance with the NCC. February 2019, individual building reports, including rectification recommendations, are completed. And April 2019, unit owners were finally informed of the problem. Okay, so it's an extensive time frame from 2017, May 2017, till April 2019. So, I mean, this sounds like an engineer making a mistake. Or maybe doing it in a particular way. That's the thing with engineering. It can be interpreted in different ways, and you can have different engineers, particularly structural engineers, can, slight changes to the standards over time. I know we had that on a building where one engineer would say one thing, the other one would say, oh, you can interpret it this other way. So I'd need to know a lot more about what actually happened here. But the fact that it was damaged during construction, it was caught, they've assessed the buildings. It seems like the department has probably taken a bit long to do this, but I mean, it's 9 buildings, it's extensive, they have to be methodical, and some people were just really bought at the wrong time. They bought at the wrong time. I'd say it's bad luck. Guys, let me know what you think. Do you think it's bad luck? Do you think the department should have made it aware? How would you feel if you were in one of the buildings and it was listed for 2 years? I mean, I know the people who were selling would have been really angry. But then again, if the government knew, should they disclose? Anyway, guys, thank you for joining me for this episode. Like, share, and subscribe. And I've just started a TikTok because it was a social media marketing event, and I'll talk about it. I'll do a video tomorrow on it. So I'm doing a TikTok to reach out to the young'uns as a Gary V challenge. We'll see how that goes. So follow me on there, Heise Says. Anyway, guys, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.